CEO Mark McDaniel, our Wilmington market leader Deanna Sargent, Green, and all of our staff, and just say, we all welcome you and want to say thank you to all of you for everything that you did from the bottom of our hearts, because everybody here had something to do with where we are today. And I want to say this is a really happy day after a situation that was pretty devastating. And I've lived in Wilmington for 25 years, live about a mile from here, and I'll just never forget the call I got from the Secretary of Health and Social Services Labor Day weekend about the flood we had just taken over the property. And then coming here, a couple days later, or the next day, I can't remember exactly, but just how flooded it was. There were cars that had been deserted. There were people living in vans. I mean, it was just a really awful situation. So I'm just so happy to be here, and wanted to again say thank you for everyone coming together, because it was really an incredible effort. It included so many different individuals. So you'll hear more from them. You'll hear more about that. But I did want to take the opportunity just to acknowledge our elected and appointed officials. We have the mayor, of course, Maria Bynum from HUD, and we'll say more later. Of course. Councilwoman Oliver's here, and we have our other speakers, Dana Hancher from HTC Mid-Atlantic, and Kevin Kelly from Leon Winter and Associates, and Eugene Young, the director of DSHA. If they haven't come yet, we're expecting representatives from our congressional offices, from Senator Harper and Representative Lisa Blunt Rochester's office. And if you're here, please raise your hand. Oh, there you are. I'm sorry. My glasses are getting fogged up here. So that's, I think, what I'll say so far. I'm going to turn it over to Corrine, who's going to just tell a little bit about the beginning of the story, and then we're going to go through our speakers, and it will all come together. And again, thank you all for being here.
Thank you. I'm Corrine Hisney. She introduced me as Corrine, like Cher. I just go by my first name. So I'm Corrine Hisney. Hello and welcome. This is indeed an exciting day, one that all of us here have been eagerly anticipating for a long time. All of us that have been involved with the Claymont Street Apartments and the residents. As I head up the communications at Scenair, and we had barely assumed ownership of the property when Hurricane Ida came barreling through this neighborhood on September 1st, 2021. As you know, the damage to the building and to this neighborhood was immense. Susan described it, it was like a war zone here. Just to kind of draw you a picture, the water level reached almost to underneath the Claymont Street sign there. I saw pictures earlier today from the Ministry of Caring that the water was almost to the top of that rolling window. The Claymont building behind us has been completely restored, but many of the surrounding buildings still bear the watermark of the water line that day. The basement of the Claymont building, which housed the electric meters that you now see moved to the outside over here, along with much of the first floor, were completely underwater. It took more than a week for the water to reside. It's Mother Nature's law. It's easier for water to come in than it is for it to come out, and it took a lot of effort to get that water out. Most significantly, though, of course, more than the damage to the building and the neighborhood, it was the lives impacted. That day, 29 resident families at Claymont Street Apartments lost their homes and most of their belongings. Many of you saw on the news, many of them had to be taken away on boats. Down the street in front of us was shown on the news across our area. The flooding was just the beginning of the hardships the residents faced. Their lives were upended, and it was chaos. As part of the Scenair team that worked with the residents, following the flood, I was inspired by their resilience, and I also understood their pain and the frustrations that they had. At the same time, I was so proud to see our Wilmington community come together. It was an amazing sight to see. Several of them are sitting behind me here or among us in the crowd. Everyone did what they could, pitched in. It took a village, and we are here to show gratitude for all of you. You'll hear today about a task force that was formed that included nonprofits, state and local government agencies, and even a private developer, Leon Weiner and Associates. They came together following the flood to provide all the residents of Wilmington that were impacted by the hurricane with the support and services they needed. And they didn't stop until every resident had permanent housing. Today we're here to celebrate the rehabilitation and the reopening of Claymont Apartments behind me. That we're bringing 29 units with this of newly refurbished, affordable apartment homes back to Wilmington. More than $3.9 million was invested in the restoration, leaving no part of the building untouched. From the infrastructure to the cosmetics, the building has been renovated. But just as important, we're here to express gratitude and to hear from just a few of the many, many organizations and people who made today possible. We have a good list of speakers to get through today, and it's hot, so out of respect for time, please direct any comments or questions that you have to the individual speakers following the ribbon cutting ceremony. To start us off, I'm going to introduce Mark McDaniel, the President and CEO of Senior. Our team was here the day after the hurricane, and we saw firsthand the devastation that it left behind and the need for immediate action. When we told Mark what had happened here on Claymont Street, he gave us the immediate charge to do whatever was needed to support the residents. I'd like to introduce Mark McDaniel.
Thank you. That's really cool, Kareem. You got them to do that for me. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I spent the morning over at the Team Warehouse, the Reach Riverside group. Saw all the work that they were doing. And as I was going through the center there, I looked up on the wall, and one of the students and one of the young people had posted this sign that really struck me, because it's kind of how I've always thought being a leader and being good in business is what we should all be. But I read it and it said, "Work in silence, let your success be your noise." That's why I'm not going to talk about all the things we may have done or didn't do or did do. And it's about the impact that this had on these residents and how this community came together to make it right. Personally, this is very personal to me. I've been in that situation. In 2001, our house burned down. At night, I was sleeping. Myself, my wife, and two of our 4 kids got out. And as I was sitting across the street on the curb in my underwear, nothing else except white underwear, looking at our house, everything we had going up. Cars blew up in the garage. Had 4 different fire departments come, and I'm sitting there like, what do we do now? Especially with children. And there was, we had nothing, like our credit cards, driver's licenses, bank statements, everything. And you just don't know, and I know the feeling that many people had here was one of absolute hopelessness. What am I going to do? I don't have the resources to manage this. And that feeling in your gut that all is lost. I understood it. I've lived it. It took us a long while to figure out how to get back on our feet. Neighbor across the street that we didn't really know well took us in for 3 days. We couch surfed the neighborhood for a while until we got, the insurance was not a pleasant experience. We finally got into temporary housing at a hotel. The thing that I asked our team to do, above anything, forget the building, focus on the residents. Make sure, number one, they get into temporary safe housing. There's food, there's clothing, there's toys and books for the kids. That was my number one request of our first thing to try to do. As we did that, we started to see more of the community like show up. And it wasn't like we were asking, it was just the community showed up. One of the first people was Stacy Henry, who was already here working with a number of the residents. And so we asked her, you know, we need your help, and so we hired her to work for us, to work with the families, to help us find all the resources that we could to take care of everybody. And people did, churches, community groups, individuals, we only know who they were, started showing up. And then the city, and then the state, and you know, the health, everybody started getting there. It was impressive. It was an impressive thing. The people up here were critical of this. I mean, without them and the people I've mentioned, we wouldn't be looking at this, because there'd be 29 people that probably wouldn't have found a place yet. Everybody here had a piece of that, and we really need to applaud that. You know, we're just a part of it. So my time here. This is I talk about this, and all this past comes up for me, so I get a little emotional because I know the feeling, and so you know, it was. I feel we did everything we could. Were we perfect at it? No. People started telling our story for us, which is never a good thing, but that's what happened, you know. But we stayed silent, and we worked hard, and our success is our noise. So I want to thank all of you for all the support. Thank you to everybody, the Wiener Company, Eugene, the Housing Authority, HDC. I mean, we came into this, you weren't even hardly on the property yet, and you got faced with this. You know, it's the mayor, HUD, I mean, everybody, you know, they all contributed this, and we need to really have great appreciation. So, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next, I'd like to introduce our mayor, and he never likes a long introduction, but I just want to say two quick things. First of all, you know, we talked a little bit about coming here and what it felt like. I mean, just think if you were the mayor of Wilmington. This was one property. I can't imagine what you went through in those days after Ida. And you're just a great leader, and I just want to acknowledge your commitment to communities. I mean, he's always talked about neighborhood revitalization, the importance of residents, the importance of our communities, and I think everyone recognizes that. And those of us that are in housing or working with residents really appreciate your deep commitment and what you've done as mayor.
Thank you. That was very nice of you. Be sure to put that on my campaign list. So, just three thoughts here. First of all, affordable housing remains the biggest challenge for all of us throughout the city. The distance between the ability to pay and the cost of providing this housing continues to widen. It's just a real world market challenge that we all face, but we're all committed to continuing to provide as much livable housing for our residents as conceivably possible. The second thing is, I remember when I remember Ida, when we came out here and there were little boats all over the place and we had emergency vehicles all over. And I remember knocking on every door and going to see everybody in these streets up and down this very little, fairly narrow area that was affected. And people really had problems. And their big problem was, water rises, the house was fine, but now the electrical panel got covered up. So now you can't live in the house when you have no power. And our guys correctly would not let people put that power on. And so there were a lot of complications that happened through this. What struck me at that time, and this is a more systemic issue that you deal with, okay, we have 40 people who've got problems, or 50 or 70, whatever the number is. It's a manageable number until you decide what can we do with folks. And I'm just telling you, there's never 70 empty units waiting for people to move into. There's no plan, there's no sensible plan that you can have. You say, let's build a backup facility just in case there's a crisis. This was one kind of crisis. We had 30 some odd units closed down on Adams Street because our L&I inspectors went in and said, this is dangerous. These are dangerous houses. Nobody should live here. So we made this tough choice. Two bad choices. Let people live in a dangerous home, I mean literally structurally dangerous facility, or move them out and deal with all the headache that comes with that. Well, actually, L&I said, you're not going to live with us, so we put them out on the street. And it was hell. It was really terrible because there's no easy place to go. And I remember over here, we had problems because we could get people back in, and the landlord said, I don't want those tenants back. Real world problems. Real world problems. Not our tenants. Landlord says, tenant doesn't pay the rent, bad tenant, we don't want them back even. So now we have to fight with the landlord to deal with the folks who get displaced. I'm just telling you it's a big issue. So for the IDA kind of problems, the big issue is sustainability. It is what do we do to prevent that from ever happening again. By the way, it was an extraordinarily rare case. The Christina floods. We have plenty of problems over on that side of the city. 91 never floods. We never have that problem up here until all of a sudden we get this horrific rain event up in Pennsylvania, and then we just get that tsunami that comes down the river. Now, is it fixable? We think it is, and that's where we want to go now. We want to basically put a wall against the Brandywine on the other side of our main highway here, so that water never gets back here again. And we're working with a congressional delegation to get funds so we can prevent this kind of terrible event from ever happening again. It's a reality that too much of our city is in danger of flooding over time, and we have to deal with this the way everybody across the country does. So, and then the last thing is, Councilwoman Oliver, this northeast neighborhood may be the most vibrant of any in the entire city. The things that are going on here are tremendous. Mark, you mentioned the Team Warehouse, just one piece of a vibrant puzzle that's going on everywhere around here. We've got some great announcements coming up, but we've just got so much going on up here. It's really, really, really exciting. And so we can't let the negative stuff cloud our enthusiasm for everything that's going on here. So thank you very much for having me here. It's a wonderful time to have all of our colleagues coming together and pulling the plow together and making terrific neighborhoods for our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, with many of the power units being out, or the meters being out after the storm, much of the area has undergone renovation and addressing that, so we do have water issues in the future. The power won't be as impacted. And one of the things we did here with Claymont Street was we took those 29 meters that you see there from the basement, and they're above ground, and so that with water hopefully doesn't come here again. We are more ready to address that. And talking about the rise of the Brandywine Creek, when we had that storm that day, the river crested at 23.5 feet, which is 4 inches higher than in its history. So it was a huge amount of water that came through. I also want to take a moment. I'm going to talk about the task force that was developed. And I want to give a special shout out to our partners at Leon Wiener and Associates. They're a private developer that really stepped up to help all of the Wilmington residents impacted by Hurricane Ida who lost their homes. They assigned a full-time staff person. I see Marie Ortiz here. I don't know if Denise O'Neill is here too, but oh, hi Denise. Yeah. They were phenomenal to work with. A full-time staff person worked just specifically with the Claymont residents and those impacted by Ida to help them through the myriad of paperwork and documents that they needed to apply for housing. And they also moved them to the top of the waiting list at all of their properties. That's the kind of, it takes a village that came together to support this effort, and we're grateful for that. I mentioned the task force that came together. They met regularly for more than a year after the hurricane to support the support the residents of Wilmington in general impacted by Ida. Today we have Maria Bynum, the field office director of HUD in Wilmington here. She led our task force that met regularly. Her leadership, her warmth, and her energy in general are just always a pleasure to work with, and I'm excited to welcome her to the stage.
I'm Maria Bynum with HUD, and I bring you greetings from our HUD Regional Administrator, Matthew Heckles, who couldn't be here today. And I want to share that our HUD team here in Delaware, Benita Johnson and Samantha Diefenbacher, are part of the team. Sam is here, Benita could not be here. And we have our very own HUD Public Housing Director for Eastern PA and Delaware, Monica Hawkins here from Philadelphia. So we are all here and happy to participate in today's reopening of the Claymont Street apartments. You know, for those who left these apartments several years ago, it's nice to come home, I'm sure. And those who are now calling this home, their new home, we welcome them to the neighborhood. As Corrine, the mayor, and others have said, this was a catastrophic event, and it was in the aftermath, as Corrine said, that federal, state, and city governments and housing organizations came together to find a way to help those who have been displaced. So today I'm humbly representing what I call the village of partners who met over more than a year to focus our resources, our problem-solving skills, and our barrier-busting efforts to house people that were displaced here and those in the city, some of those in the city. So I stand here to say thank you. Thank you to these dedicated individuals for their important commitment to this work. I want to say a special thanks to FEMA's Mark O'Hanlon and to the Delaware Emergency Management Agency team. They helped kickstart this effort, this coming together of the village. And some things happened right after the event, not in this order, but just to kind of lay the framework here. The president declared the area a presidential disaster. The HUD team in Delaware and Philadelphia's regional office worked with the highest levels of the department. I was reporting to the deputy secretary daily about what was happening here. She was asking me, how is the mayor? Did you reach out to the city council members? I reached out, but I couldn't reach anyone because they were in the community trying to help their residents. But we were reporting what was happening here, and the deputy wanted to know. The governor supported the recovery and housing of residents. We know the mayor, the city council, those who were here on the ground, did nothing but welcome anyone that could help them during this event. So when the village started meeting, we had to work to conquer challenges. The mayor talked about some of the challenges he faced, that the residents faced. But government agencies coming together, dealing with residents who have lost so much. Our problem is we can't share personally identifiable information. So it was a matter, how do we help without giving all the details? Well, let me tell you, we did that, amazingly enough. We went through by numbers, by families, by individuals. And the challenge also was that we were in the middle of a pandemic, for goodness sake, and housing was in short supply, and each family had a specific need. And as the weeks wore on and the challenges continued, we kept working at it. And I'll share some of the examples of some of the challenges we were able to overcome. There were many, but I'll just say a few. HUD had just announced emergency housing vouchers. And they were designed to help those who are homeless or who are at risk of homelessness and other vulnerable populations. And so we wanted to somehow take this new voucher and see if we could help the residents who were homeless. Well, we hadn't worked out all the kinks yet. And so it was Monica Hawkins who gathered together the Wilmington Housing Director, Ray Fitzgerald, the Housing Alliance Delaware Director, Rachel Stucker, and we sat down and we tried to figure out how we could unblock the barriers and get these vouchers flowing to help the residents who have been displaced. And so we somehow made the process a little more efficient, and we were able to use that resource. And I must say, I have to applaud my colleague Monica, because she jumped on many of those calls. She may have come in late, but she jumped on those calls to listen, to offer expertise, and she didn't have to do that. So I thank you for that, Monica. And if you'll wave your hands so people will see you. The State Department of Health and Social Services assembled a team to work just with those who were displaced. We had special case managers and the resources to do whatever it took to shelter and house these families. So I want to shout out to Muriel Gillespie, case managers extraordinaire, Aaliyah and Viola, State Service Center Director Renee Beeman, and her staff member Rachel Surratt, and her whole team there at the State Service Center. The city's Office of Emergency Management was meeting with residents and others in the city to help homeowners and renters. And Director Willie Patrick, who has a heart that he wears on his sleeve, was on the job 24/7, and he became an essential part of the village. Delaware State Housing Authority came to HUD because it needed the okay to let its properties know they could make accommodations for these families since they were displaced by the flooding and circumstances allowed for them to move up the list. And so Delaware State advised their properties about the need to house these individuals and families, and the property managers and landlords stepped up to the plate. And we have to give a big shout out to Leon Weiner and Associates for their help, and especially Denise O'Neill, DSJ's Eugene Young, and Tricia Conley. We thank you for your help and for your work. I hear Eugene was on the phone talking to people trying to find housing, so we appreciate that so much. Again, I'll say the Wilmington Housing Authority Executive Director Ray Fitzgerald and his staff worked tirelessly to work with their resources to see how they could house people. We thank Sanair and its team, Susan Frank, Deanna Sargent, and Corrine Hisme, for working alongside us to house those who had to leave the Claymont Street apartments and to do what it took to renovate the apartments for the reopening today. Corrine, as I mentioned, asked me to share the story of our village, but she has documented it, and I hope that she gets to share her story in some form or fashion, because I think it will be a lot more inclusive of everyone and everything. So getting back to this village, we were looking at the families, the individuals, we were looking at the numbers, and we watched the numbers slowly descend. They got lesser and lesser, and we worked doggedly to place each family or individual. And as I reflect on our work, I'm reminded of something that Eleanor Roosevelt said. We do not have to become heroes overnight, just a step at a time, meeting each thing that comes up, seeing it as not as dreadful as it appears, discovering that we have the strength to stare it down. I count the village of partners that I had the pleasure to work with as sheroes and heroes. We never gave up individually or as partners. We left no stone unturned. We gave it our best. And the reward was in the families that found a safe place to live after what was probably one of the worst times in their lives. So today, we have come full circle with the reopening of the Claymont Street apartments. So I must tell you, and I'll get a little emotional too, my heart is full with joy because of today and the reopening. And the great work of Samir throughout the journey. I have pride for the great work of our Village of Partners, of which Samir was a member, shows you how we can all work together. And gratitude for each and every one who had a hand in any way, whether it was our team or other individuals and teams, in helping to house our neighbors. So I'm only 5'1", hardly can see above this, but today I'm standing on the shoulders of so many that help those displaced. So I feel, for the moment, 6 feet tall, if you can imagine that. And so I want to thank you for the opportunity to share our story and to say thank you for all that each and every one did. I see Stacy Henry in the audience. We thank her for working on the ground, and all those that aren't here that we can't acknowledge by name, but certainly everyone had a hand in it, and we thank you for that. So thank you, Kareem.
Okay, now we have Xanthia Oliver. She represents the 3rd District on the Wilmington City Council. She was the representative at the time of Ida, and she's going to share her perspective.
First, I'd like to acknowledge State Representative Stephanie T. Bowden, who has always told me this job is not easy. She once told me this job is not easy, just wait till you get some phone calls. And this was during that time. There's often a misconception that renters are not a priority in the city of Wilmington, but today it shows how we have changed that. When Wilmington was able to rebuild after this deadly hurricane, and the community was flooded, we all came together. So this is a good day. As I look back on the efforts of Hurricane Ida in 2021, I can recall what it was like. It was a tragedy for all of us to see the residents' belongings, homes underwater at the time. City Council, other elected officials, partner with the communities, the mayor, and everybody. The mayor also provided some homeowners with hot water tank, electric box. Other partners assisted with hotel vouchers, bags, clothes. The warehouse was open for people to come to PAL Center, and as many have said, nobody knew what to do. It was the first time for everything. So there's a lot of people here who deserve credit, and it's not here. We all stood up to the plate to do the best we could do one by one. But Samara also assisted with efforts securing Claymont Street with 24-hour fencing security to protect the residents over there from individuals going in their homes, taking items out. I believe that when we partner with organizations like Samara, we can be a better impact. We can make a better impact of our community. The Claymont Street apartments was devastated by a hurricane, but Samara stood up and took ownership. Your dedication to help more than 29 displaced and struggling families speaks volumes of your mission of putting people together and not for profit. Thank you for making a difference in this Northeast area, and you continue the good work. Thank you again.
Hi, next I'd like to introduce Kevin Kelly, who's the chairman of Leon Weiner and Associates. We've heard a lot of accolades already for what the organization did, but I just want to say quickly, I've known Kevin for 30 plus years as a friend and colleague, and the first day of my job at Delaware State House, maybe not the first day, but one of the first days, he and Leon Weiner, the true Leon Weiner, came down and gave me an earful about what needed to be done in housing, and it's a little intimidating, but they always were like that, and he really followed in Leon's footsteps of being very direct about what needs to be done, but incredibly compassionate all the time, and just being there when something has to happen, and being brave enough to speak up when things are going wrong. And I know it's been said, but he was one of my first calls when we were looking for housing, and the team did truly so much to make sure that we could put residents in those units. And that wasn't happening. We weren't finding any other solutions, and they really came to the table. So thank you, Kevin. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Susan. And yes, it has been 30 some odd years, and I do remember that meeting. And for those of you, I know that the mayor knew Leon very well. Representative Bolden also. But for those of you who never met Leon, take it from me, Mayor will vouch for it, Representative Bolden, you would never forget the encounter. It truly is a national figure in the development of programs on affordable housing. But when we got the call, Susan reached out to my partner, Glenn Brooks, who's president of our company, and told us of the circumstances. Glenn, I know, said yes, came over to my office, and we said, round up the troops. Round up the troops, find out what needs to be done, where we can play a role, and make it happen. Volunteer. And remember, these were people that we took from our various and sundry complexes who had full-time jobs doing something else. But the enthusiasm and commitment they showed to making a reality, that is, rehousing these displaced families, was remarkable. And we have here today Tim Lamberto, who is now our COO, our Chief Operating Officer, but he headed up our property management division at the time. Denise was his right-hand person, and the contact for us and for the working group was a property manager from Carlton Court down in Newark, Maria Ortiz. Maria? So when we were first contacted, there are, as there is with every federal program, a series of rules and regulations, restrictions. We put the word out to all our properties. Who can you house? We came back 2 people. We had 2 vacancies. And unfortunately, that is the case most frequently. The mayor spoke about it earlier, about the crisis in affordable housing. This country has a crisis in affordable housing. And we had waiting lists that went from months to literally, over our entire portfolio, which is 70 properties in 10 states, we have waiting lists that are, if you take the normal attrition, will run 4 years if you apply. Mostly at senior housing. When the president declared a disaster, a national emergency and disaster, we were able to revise the admission standards, that is our priority list for occupancy in our complexes. We did that immediately. And doing that permitted us to put those who have been displaced at the top of the list, as they should have been. And shortly after the formation of the task force and the working group, we were proud to say that we housed 16 of those 29 families, assisted finding others who had certificates housing outside of our communities. But we had 16 in 7 of our complexes in and around Newcastle County. We offered people occupancy. We go from north to south, from Claymont to Delmar. We happen to be the largest owner and operator of affordable housing in the state. Nobody was too wild about relocating to Delmar. Nothing against Delmar, but they didn't feel like going there. But fortunately, we were able to, in 7 or 8 complexes in and around, both in the city and in the county, we're able to house those families. And it's truly sort of in keeping with the mantra and the credo that Leon Wiener always talked about, and I'm going to read that to you. He said, people from every corner of every state, from every walk of life and economic circumstance, share a common need, a common dream, a common desire. A decent, safe, and affordable place to call home. That is our mantra. There isn't a person that steps in our office to start working for us that doesn't hear that and hear it time and time again. It's part of our DNA. It drives us. It's our culture and our values. And we were delighted to be able to put our shoulder to the wheel and assist these families, particularly given the challenges of finding affordable housing anywhere in the state. So it was our honor and pleasure to assist. And I can't take any credit for it other than say go ahead. And the people sitting in the back here, Tim, Denise, and Maria, are really the heroes from our organization in these efforts. So I want to thank them. There were 15 other people. We had a task force of 16 that met on a regular basis in the building to try and work through these. But Maria really, and Denise and Tim herded the cats and got us pointed in the right direction. So again, our pleasure in trying to, and honor to help these displaced families. Thank you.
HTC became involved with Claymont Apartments, first as the property manager when Sinair assumed ownership at the time of the flood. They did an amazing job hitting the ground, communicating with residents and assisting them in seeking out additional housing. In February of this year, as the building renovation was completed, HTC assumed ownership of the property and began the lease-up process. Kevin mentioned the 16 of the original resident families are now living permanently found permanent housing with Leon Wiener properties. Dana's going to talk about the residents that are back at Claymont Street Apartments, that we're excited about that. Several others, some moved out of state. All of them have found some permanent housing. To start out, I'd like to introduce Dana Hanshin, President and CEO of HDC.
Thank you so much. Again, my name is Dana Hanshin, President and CEO of HDC Mid-Atlantic. We are so excited to celebrate the grand reopening here at Claymont Street Apartments. For those of you who don't know us, HDC builds and preserves affordable housing in Delaware, Pennsylvania, and Maryland, serving more than 5,000 residents in 72 communities. We believe that housing is a human right, and we are committed to ensuring that everyone has a safe, welcoming, affordable place to call home. Remember that word welcoming. That's very important. Folks talk a lot about safe and affordable. We believe in welcoming people home, creating a sense of belonging and connectedness, recognizing that we're a long-term partner in the community, connecting with our residents to ensure not only they have a safe place to live, but building community and connections with others. We are thrilled to welcome Claymont Street to HDC family. It joins another 540 apartments that we own and manage here in Delaware, including Quaker Art Apartments here in Wilmington, which we were thrilled to celebrate the grand opening this past spring. We all talked about the damage that Hurricane Ida brought in 2021. People's lives were upended by the storms and families lost their homes. But just for a moment, I'd like everyone to reflect on what home means to you, and I appreciate Mark sharing his story, what home meant to him when he faced tragedy himself. Perhaps words like safety, comfort, and stability and hope come to mind. This notion of home is what we're celebrating today, reclaiming hope and opportunity at Claymont. It is a new day here, and HDC could not be prouder to work alongside Sinair to make the necessary repairs and get this community back online. To date, we have moved in 14 families. 3 of those families we have welcomed back. We know the wait has been too long. We have a number of applications that we are currently processing, but we're overjoyed that folks are coming back to call Claymont home again. More than 500 households applied for housing here at Claymont. That's 17 applicants for 1 apartment available. Earlier this year, we talked about the need for affordable housing in Delaware at 18,000 units. A new report was released by the National Low Income Housing Coalition. It's now at 21,000 units that are needed. As practitioners, champions, and advocates, we cannot go numb to these statistics. It should hit us in the gut every time, driving us to do better and do more. And HDC remains committed to doing its part by bringing housing solutions to Wilmington and across the state. I want to thank members of the HDC team, our Senior Vice President of Real Estate Development and his team who assisted Sonera in inspecting work in place for the construction, and to our VP of Property Management, Wendy Smith, and her Regional Manager, Yvonne Garvey, who's here today with her team for the help in assisting with the lease-up. Thank you, Sonera, for trusting us, and to Mayor Puzicki and Eugene Young for trusting us to deliver as well. We're so grateful for your ongoing support in seeing this community to come back online. And without every single one of us working together, like a village, we would not be here celebrating today. And finally, to our Claymont residents, welcome home.
Thank you, Dana. Well, last and certainly not least is our esteemed Director of the Delaware State Housing Authority, Eugene Young. And we have share, I think, a special kinship because we both have had the same job. I was director many, many years ago, which tells you how old I am. But it was interesting, we were at an event recently and Deanna was being honored and Eugene gave a pretty stirring speech, and I said, I don't think I was ever that inspiring when I was the director. So I was very like, wow. So, and they, you know, he's running for Congress, which is really great. But I want to say, I want to say thank you to you and your team, because I don't know how many times I called Susan and various people, I think Trish, and just your rental assistance. We were trying to just unpack so many different things that maybe we could do, just like everyone has said. Like, what can we possibly do? But you were always supportive. You've done a great job as a director, and we look forward to hearing your remarks.
Raise this up a little bit. All right, good. I'm sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. How are we all today? That's not good enough. We are moving people, like, for the calamity this was on that day in September, Labor Day weekend, September. This is a joyous, beautiful occasion. I'm going to just start just a little bit on the personal side. Like, when I first started my job here, I was about a month and a little bit of change in when this occurred. And I remember our good representative, Stephanie T. Bolden, don't forget the T, and Councilwoman Oliver and the mayor, pretty much saying, like, what are we going to do? What has to happen about this? And it's been a process going through this whole time period. But I always go back to, you know, people hear me say this often about leadership. One of my favorite lines is, you can't lead without loving, you can't save without serving. So what's the depth of your love? What's the quality of your service? It was that moment in September that kind of pushed us to bring that quality of service. And we did not know how it was going to come, to be honest with you. But we knew we kind of had to huddle up together, whether I was with Snare, the great team Snare, HUD, Mayor's office. I'm going to get into Leon Weiner, Arbor Manager, because it was just phenomenal. HDC, this has been like a labor of love. And it's been some bumps along the way. Nothing comes easy. But I think, as Dana said, 100%, one of the biggest underlying issues of all this is the fact that we do not have enough affordable housing in our state. And so, you know, as Dana was correct, we have when I walked in that August, the number was around 18,000, and she's correct, it is around 21,000 now. And as a state with so many people, this is crazy. I'm a fourth generation Delawarean. My family moved over here in 1919, a couple blocks away from here. And it's hard for me to say this, but as a Delawarean through and through, we have people moving to Delaware by the droves. People moving to Delaware by the droves. It's already not as much affordable housing as it is, but if you go to a Forbes magazine article from March, it'll say we're one of the top 10 importing states of people per capita in the country. Certainly on the East Coast. We are Delaware, so why would that not happen, right? So it compounds the fact that we need more units available for the residents. And so understanding and heeding that kind of call, I appreciate the governor for it. Normally each year it's around $10 million each year for affordable housing. No matter what the situation, like 88, 98, 2008, 2018, it's $10 million. Our governor and our legislature was able to put through $122 million for housing, which is a big deal, historic, right? But using housing metaphor, this is still a down payment on efforts that are going to occur as we move forward to get more units available to take on some of these numbers. So that's on just the overall climate piece. But I also want to just really thank all the partners in making this happen. I remember literally driving to work, going to our Dover office, and on the call, and I just, I get a call from one of the residents and saying some of the issues. I was almost in tears with them as they were in tears about some of the issues of trying to be housed. And the fact that this woman said, I just have my child and my car. That is it. All I have, Eugene, is my child and my car. And she said, I have a job, but I still can't get myself together because I only have my child and my car. And it was through this conversation, I literally remember driving down Route 1, and I called my team and I said, who do I need to talk to? They said, and I actually, I was talking to like an admin, and she said, I don't know, I'm going to get in contact with somebody, we'll get someone back to you. And so I just started calling numbers, and I ended up talking to Denise. And I said, Denise, we need to figure something out. I have someone, how do we make this work? And she was so receptive, so kind, and so gracious, and saying, we're going to find a place, we're going to work here, we're going to work there. It has just been this larger collaborative effort of everyone putting their arms around it, from Stacy, Sanera, City of Wilmington, our legislators, HTC. This has been an ongoing labor of love, ladies and gentlemen. And so as we think about this, think about the fact of people coming together in a tough time. Because it's not, here's the sad part, it's not just here. Because it happened here, but then around 6 months later, it happened in Laurel. Because there was a fire, and they had many families in Laurel that were forced to be homeless. Then it happened again in Adams Street, where the mayor was right. We had to condemn a building. We had people going through all kinds of issues at those properties. So this is something that we need to continue, understand that we need to collaborate, and we need to keep pushing for more affordable housing. I'm thankful that you all are doing all these things. I look forward to working with you, but let's all remember that this is not something that's going to come easy. Our country is behind around 4 million to 6.5 million units. This is going to be a fight. This is going to be a fight making sure it's priority, and I'm not just saying this because I'm the housing guy, but it's going to be a fight keeping it high level of priority, make sure we're able to put more people and more units. Thank you to all the partners, the DHSS family in back, Sanera again, Housing Alliance for Delaware, City of Wilmington, HTC, Sanera, Susan. I'm glad I am part of this family of DSHA. I know the handshake now. But it has been, but this is about collaborating when calamities like this occur, recognizing the fact that what happens to anyone that lives in this apartment, it happens to us. It's like it happens to our cousin, our aunt, our family member, our loved one. And so I appreciate everyone for stepping up and meeting the needs at the moment. Thank you.
I love hearing Eugene speak. When he last told us the definition of leadership, I was taking notes, and it's very powerful. This has been a wonderful gratitude fest. I hope that we have not missed anyone. There's been a lot of shout-outs, but it really did take a village. Everyone came together. I apologize if we missed anybody. Follow up with us afterwards, and we'll give you a big hug. So I want to thank our speakers. I also want to encourage everyone, we're going to line up afterwards for a photo op and do a ribbon cutting in front of the sign. We have tours of the building open. Like as I mentioned, $3.9 million went into renovating that building. We have an apartment and the community room open on the first floor for you to walk through and tour and just see the improvements made to the building, and then the apartments available. So we encourage you to do that. Have some snacks. Thank you for joining us. And we'll move across the street for the ribbon line. All right.
2, 1 to the left. There we are.